Okay, thanks, Rianne. So like Rianne said, my name is Emily. I lead our education programs on the farm, and I also have the great privilege and pleasure of working out on the farm with the farm team, with the soil team. Behind the camera today, we have Jess. Maybe she can give a quick wave. This is Jess. She's our restoration specialist. And she is just a genius with what she does. So maybe she'll pipe in when I don't quite know the answers to some of the questions. And I'm grateful to have her here as a coworker and a friend who makes me a little bit more comfortable on camera. We on the farm are taking COVID very seriously. You'll see Jess and I wearing masks. Because we are 6 feet away and we are outside, I am actually going to remove my mask so that you can hear and see me a little bit better. Jess and I spoke beforehand and she feels comfortable with that, as long as Lucky doesn't eat my mask here. Uh-oh. Awesome. So like Rianne said, we are in the Sammamish Valley, originally land and still land of the Coast Salish peoples. It's been farmed for the last about 120 years and is now part of the Sammamish APD, Agricultural Production District, which means it is farmland in perpetuity, which is pretty cool. Before we get started on the tour, we're going to walk around the farm, see a bunch of things, chat about a bunch about what we do and how we do it. But I'm curious, the participants who are here today, if you could share a little bit more, and we'll practice with our Zoom skills, about what brings you here today, or what is one thing you're interested to learn about. And I know that you can't physically be here with us and feel and touch and smell, so I'm going to do my best to provide some sensory experiences and tell you about it. So I can tell you that these goats are just knocking me over practically. The other thing I should mention is I do have a sprained ankle right now. So Jess and I are going to be walking slow. So do bear with us and we'll get moving. Okay, so last thing before we head over to our greenhouse is I just want to get us set up with 3 important pieces of vocabulary that we talk a lot about on the farm. The first one is land stewardship. So land stewardship is sort of how we caretake our land, with emphasis on sustainability and future generations. Jess, would you add anything to that definition? No? Cool. So we talk a lot about how we're stewarding the land and why we're doing it. So just we're all on the same page there. Another thing we talk about is agroecology. Has anyone heard the term agroecology before? No? That's okay. It was new to me when I started here. Agroecology is kind of beyond regenerative farming. So we think of sustainable farming, we think of sustainable farming to regenerative farming to agroecology. And we farm with an agroecological lens, meaning an ecological approach to agriculture. And we take the idea of ecological, or what is ecology, and we kind of critically think about that. So ecology is not just biological systems, but in fact, all different sorts of systems: political, human, cultural, animal, all that kind of stuff. So when we use that lens, that ecological lens, to look at agriculture, we're able to really incorporate issues of food access and larger issues such as climate action and things on a global scale as well as a hyper-local scale. Agroecology also really values experiential knowledge and individual knowledge. So thinking of indigenous folks and folks who have worked the land for a long time know about their own specific lands, right? So thinking about land in New York, what is that land? How are you gonna know about it specifically? Cool, and the last term, so we did land stewardship, we did agroecology, and the last one is soil health, which we just focus on so intensely, almost singularly here on the farm. Healthy produce is a byproduct of healthy soil, is what we kind of joke about. So healthy soil is the soil's ability to function and support life. And it comes as sort of a Venn diagram in the middle. This is healthy soil of the physical properties, the biological properties, and the chemical properties of soil. And enough talking for now. I'll explain more about that later. Any questions on those 3 big vocabulary pieces? So we're walking through the farm and you can see that it looks a little bit overgrown right now. And that's okay. Farmland doesn't have to look perfect. In fact, a lot of this does have use. We do have quite a bit of weed pressure on this farm, and we'll talk a little bit about that more when we get out to the field. Rianne, can you still hear me?
Yes, thank you so much for checking. Yep.
Yeah.
looks like such a beautiful day right now. I see the
I know, it
sun.
turned into a gorgeous day. It was raining pretty intensely this morning.
A little
You
bit
can
of
see
water.
that I'm walking. I've got my ankles stabilized in my giant muck boot. Jess actually might have to help me get it out of there after, after this. So we're walking by, this is actually going to be the site of our learning garden. And Anthony, our farm manager, just mowed down the cover crop. That's kind of a cool thing to see. Cover crop is one of the many tools we use to promote healthy soils. And we'll talk a little bit about that more in a moment. But here's our greenhouse. And I quickly wanted to highlight some of the aspects of green sustainable technology that we use on the farm. Back, can you sort of pan to where the solar panels are, Jess? I don't know if you can see that behind the greenhouse. Maybe a little bit. So we use green technology here on the farm, both as a way to responsibly steward the land on mission, and also to do some creative problem solving. For example, we don't have electricity or power out on the farm. So Jess is showing you the chicken area. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Awesome. And since there's so few of us, you folks are welcome to unmute and just kind of interject. Please feel free to do that. It's okay if you have some background noise, children or animals or whatever. So Jess is showing you the solar array that is over by, did you show them the solar array?
I did.
Cool. Over by the chicken fence. So that's an electric fence that we need up because of the coyotes that come in. And we're able to do that through solar power, which is really cool. Another thing I wanted to highlight with our green building technology is this is our greenhouse, which is my happy place, although it's a little hot in the summer. You can see we've just seeded the last of our lettuces.
Wow.
I know, little babies. Actually, I did all of these ones. That's kind of cool. So this is our rocket mass heater, which is a really cool piece of, I would say, sort of ancient technology. And we use, it's sort of like a giant, intense, really highly effective and efficient wood burning stove. And we put all of our kindling in here, and it heats up this drum. The excess gas goes up through this chimney, and it creates a really hot space under, this is hollow under here, this brick. And it's a rocket mass heater because it gets hot in this mass of brick and then radiates heat throughout the greenhouse. So we're able to keep it warm in here in early spring when we're seeding all of our vegetables and it's still really cold outside. So that's a pretty cool piece of innovative technology that we're able to use without power out here. Any other examples of sustainable technology we use on the farm, Jess?
Well, we catch water off.
Oh, water catchment, of course. So we have a lot of water catchment, which we could just quickly look at. We have rain barrels and things like that. The water we have on the farm, we do have a cistern, and then we're also connected to city water. We try to use as much of the cistern water as possible from the well on the property. And then we're doing some water catchment back there at the end of the greenhouse. Rianne, can you see that?
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, so essentially we're trying to conserve as much of the natural resources as possible and use them and steward them in an appropriate way. So catching the water, using the water, of course, important. Even though we live in Western Washington where there's supposedly so much water in the summer, you can see the grass is still pretty dry here. Is it dry over on the East Coast?
It has been very dry this summer.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, to the pigs. Alita or Alita? Alita? I'm not sure. Alita, are you thinking about having animals on your farm?
Alita has not decided yet.
Cool.
Maybe we can convince you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that there's a lot of times in like organic or regenerative circles, there's a lot of discussion on whether or not it is applicable or appropriate to have animals on your property. I think there's a valid argument for not having them. I, however, very staunchly belong to the camp of animals belong in a regenerative system. And I'll explain why. So these are our pigs. They're actually not 21 acres pigs. We have an incredible student farmer, Masra, a young man who's studying farming and really interested in farming, and he has raised 4 pigs on the property. Here's one of them. They're very friendly. I'm a little bit nervous to get in with my ankle, but maybe I'll try. Here's another example of a solar array helping a fence. These pigs are just the most friendly, sweet darlings. So not only are they just fun to play with, they bring us a lot of joy out here. Hi.
They're so perfect.
They're so perfect, yeah. And they're huge. They're actually gonna get processed next week. Hi, honey. This one's my favorite. This is Ruby Rose. Oh no, this is May, excuse me. This is May, and she's just like such a character. But Alita, so my feeling on animals is they are able to support carbon sequestration in the soil and soil health in general. Their excrement really helps sustain soil health. They also are incredible for invasive species. So I don't know what the property is like that you're thinking about starting the farm on, but if you have invasive species like we do here, such as reed canary grass, there's a stand kind of right on the other side of Jess there. And it's a real issue here. Jess spends a lot of her time thinking of innovative ways to mitigate and get rid of these invasive species. And what would have taken her, God, what do you think, Jess, like a whole year, if not more? The pigs running them along this area, they've just been able to root up. You can see that they're rooting, meaning with their snouts, they're digging up, and they're getting rid of those rhizomes and just eliminating a whole year of work for Jess, which is pretty dang incredible. Other animals have other really important jobs. So the chickens that you just briefly saw where they were, they add a lot of nitrogen to their soil. Their excrement is really high in nitrogen, as well as they eat a lot of parasites and bugs. So they were out by the apple trees, if you noticed, and they eat a lot of those pests that would really be an issue for our organic growing of apples. So every animal has a job here, and they all kind of fit together. Would recommend. Any questions on animal husbandry? Animal wifery?
Yes. I do have a question. I'm trying to remember this system I've seen through one of my horticulture classes. Is
it rotational grazing?
I think so. Well, they had like pigs and then another animal, chickens, following behind.
Yeah, so that's rotational grazing, and that was something that is, a long-standing traditional way of farming. It's been like westernized by a guy called Joel Salatin, and I would recommend a lot of his books. They're a little bit heavy, but they're really strong in facts and rationale. He's sort of like a crazy farming evangelist, but again, lots of good gems. So the idea of rotational grazing is that you're rotating your animals in a specific order. Like you would run your cows who are grazing, but then they are dropping a lot of cow patties, and cows tend to have parasites. So then you run your chickens after the cows, and they will pick apart the cow patties and eat all those parasites out, spreading the manure and keeping the cows healthy. So it's like just a ton of symbiotic relationships between the animals and the soil and the produce that we're growing.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Cool. Rhian, can I get a time check?
Yes, looks like 11:26.
11:26. You can see that the one invasive that they're really not into, unsurprisingly, is this very thorny thistle. So maybe eventually they'll be into the thistle. Hey, buds. Hey. The other benefit of raising animals that I didn't explicitly state is getting to eat meat or eggs or whatever products that also come out of them. Cool. Shall we move on? Wait, what time did Rhian say it was? 11:30, great. Do we have any questions?
I don't see any yet. But again, feel free to jump in and chime in if you'd like on the microphone.
Yeah. Oh, maybe.
Problem?
Sorry?
Are coyotes a big problem?
Yes. We used to have quite a large chicken flock, and last year there was actually a 4th of July massacre, as we call it, and we lost a lot of our chickens. So I think when you have an imbalanced ecosystem, and that's what we'll talk about when we go into the wetlands and talk about restoration, that is Jess's mission. We're looking for an imbalanced ecosystem. And ideally, if the coyotes have other things to eat, they won't be preying so much on the chickens. I don't know, Jess is looking at me like I'm crazy, but they might always be. We do, in short, yes, coyotes are an issue. Mm-hmm. And that's part of why we have the electric fences with the solar arrays. But right behind me, I just wanted to highlight, here's an example. The pigs were just moved yesterday, but here's an example of where they've been before. And you can see that they've really done a genuinely amazing job at rooting up. And you can see where the reed canary grass was and how it is no longer there.
That's so amazing.
Right?
We did have a question from Alida.
Sure.
Wondering if the mass heater could be used through the night or only when monitored during the day.
That's a good point. I think that I think you would have to understand like the safety precautions in your own space. So like where we are, I don't know that there's a ton of safety issues with it being run. Like we generally start it in the morning and then just kind of leave it be for the day. The limiting factor on our farm is that we don't have someone living here 24 hours a day. So you have to keep feeding it with wood. Once you get it started, it's easier to keep it going. It's what? It's very efficient. So it keeps, so it doesn't burn. That doesn't make sense. It burns the wood slowly. There we go. Burns the wood slowly, but you do have to keep feeding it. So if you wanted to keep it going overnight, you might have to problem solve on getting up or, doing other things. I also think that there's a way to incorporate sustainable technology, in ways that are appropriate. So like if you had a rocket mass heater and then, subbed other forms of heat overnight or things like that, that would also be cool. So it's all about just doing what you can. But yeah, I think it would depend on your space and your proximity to the space and how big your rocket mass heater was. And we can send you some literature on it if you're interested too.
Yeah.
So we're walking out towards the fields here. And this is where the magic happens. Actually, why don't we just go hang out by the kale? This is our BCS. Jess, do you know what BCS stands for? What does the acronym stand for? I don't know. Essentially, it's a walk behind tractor. So we don't have a big tractor. Again, we're trying to really reduce our fossil fuel use on the farm. We have an electric golf cart, which has been my savior during this sprained ankle time. And then we have this baby, which does run on gas, but it's obviously a lot less fossil fuel than a regular sized tractor. I say that we have about 5 acres of production vegetables on the farm here. And we're able to do that with, usually we have a lot of volunteers, but with our 2 main farmers, you can sort of see back there, and they use their hand tools, a ton of back-breaking labor, and this BCS. So right now they've just harrowed. So they used low-till farming practices. Actually, I'm gonna pause on the low-till and we'll talk about that in a second. And instead, let's visit the vegetables first, because that's a whole can of worms.
It looks so beautiful. I just want to share that the audio and visuals look really great, and the whole
Awesome.
farm is just shining.
Awesome. I'm just gonna sit down in this kale because I think it's so lovely. So we have a ton of different kale going on. This is Erin's favorite. It's rainbow lacinato, and here we have the lacinato, also known as dino kale. And we've just got tons and tons and tons of kales and hardy greens going. There's lots of more lettuces and arugula. Anthony's back there. I think the dill, maybe it all got harvested. So super exciting. We grow a lot of produce here, and we are really, we sell it to our 21 acres market. And we partner with a food hub in the area. And we also partner and donate a ton of produce to various food banks and organizations in the greater Seattle area, such as Hunger Intervention Project, Fair Start, Harvest for Hunger, Roots and Feed, Teen Roots and Feed, I can't remember the exact name of that one, and then the Woodinville Storehouse. So we're doing our best during COVID to really support and feed our community through produce. Any questions on what we grow or why we grow it?
Just pausing.
None.
Not yet.
Just pausing. It's just, look how beautiful these brassicas are. Right next to us, you could see what Anthony was harrowing. He had mowed down and harrowed. As you can see, this flower is buckwheat. Can everybody see this?
Maybe zoom in a little. Would you mind, Jess?
So I can tell you it smells terrible, but pollinators love it. And this is, yeah. And buckwheat honey is a really interesting flavor too. But you can see it's just beyond where it just got harrowed, and there's a little strip of it here. And buckwheat is a cover crop. Do folks know what cover crops are?
Yes.
Margaret says yes. I say yes.
Okay, so a quick reminder just to refresh so we're all on the same page. So a cover crop is anything you grow for the health of the soil, not for the yield. So some things that are cover crops like mustard or different brassicas, you could grow as a crop, but we're not growing it as a crop. And there's a really specific time that you're gonna mow it down, terminate it, kill it, so that it gives the most back to the soil. And cover crops have so many different jobs. There are hundreds of different cover crops that you can utilize. And they do things like support or mitigate compaction of the soil. They can add nutrients back to the soil. They can help with water flow, help with erosion issues. They can take nutrients there if there's too much nutrients in the soil, the specific one. Maybe they take them out of the soil. What? Oh, they can feed your animals, of course. Yeah, so there's so many different options. And the idea is, again, that we're really focused on soil health. So buckwheat is one example of a summer cover crop. And then we mow it back into the soil, mow it down, and then till it in using the harrow of the BCS or hand tools and incorporate it back. And then they're creating these beds to plant some more produce. Awesome. So we could talk a little bit more about water use on the farm, about our soil management plan, about challenges with pests and weeds. What are you folks interested in hearing more about?
Ooh. I'll pause and see if anyone wants to chime in. Challenges with pests from Margaret.
Okay, so we have had our farm team, which is Jess and I and Aaron and Anthony, who are back there. I think you can sort of see them. We all came on this year, and this is our first, or I guess a little over a year ago. Jess was here before part-time as a student. He's pretty badass. So this is our first full year stewarding this land, and we have run into so many issues just learning about it and learning how best to support it, I think is the way to frame it. A couple of those things have been pests. We've in this field A, where is I think our heaviest production, we have really bad wireworms and root maggots. And so originally we were trying to grow this whole field. We have 5 different fields, A, B, C, and D. We're going to grow all of the A and brassicas. And unfortunately, wireworms particularly like brassicas. They have these really delicious roots. Brassicas would be things like kale and cabbage and broccoli and kohlrabi, et cetera, et cetera. So the wireworms just decimated this field at the beginning, late spring. And we kind of had to turn around and say, okay, well, this is the issue we're having. We're going to try growing arugula and lettuces, things that are quick succession that the wireworms are not going to get into really quick. So just kind of being responsive to what the land is saying, and it can be really frustrating. And I know we had so many days where we were just like wanting to throw down our chilling forks and this is enough, we're done. But yeah, it's been a challenging season. And then beyond the pest pressure, there's a huge weed seed bank. So you can see things like this. This is lamb's quarter. It's a chenopod, and this is more reed canary grass that the pigs were working on. We've got dandelions. There's really bad purslane. Oh, right in front of Jess there. That's actually the one that I'm particularly frustrated with right now. So yeah, so weeds, actually a good reminder to always weed, because if you're weeding consistently throughout the years, you're right now, I want to make sure to weed this lamb's quarter because it's going to seed. And if it drops those seeds, then it's just increasing the weed seed bank in this area. So if we weed everything up now, there's still progression. Some weeds don't grow back every year from the same seeds. So it's going to be a couple years of pretty intense weed pressure. So yeah, so those are the challenges we're dealing with in this particular field. And again, there's a lot of what we would call cultural practices to mitigate that. And that's part of our soil management plan and how we're practicing our low-till farming. And the big ones are, again, cover crops and managing the weeds. Cover crops can also help suppress weeds. I just keep coming back to cover crop. I feel like it's a real dang good solution. Yeah. Any follow-up questions on that guy?
Lita just shared in the chat, wondering if we're a teaching farm or also if we just grow, or if we grow for profit for farmers stands.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I guess we should have covered that earlier. I apologize. So we are a nonprofit farm. We're a family foundation.
Lost video.
Oh, lost video. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Weird.
For just.
Has it come back yet?
There we go.
There we go. Okay, cool. That's weird. We haven't moved. Yeah, so we're a nonprofit farm and we are a teaching farm. Right now, that's a little bit challenging with COVID. We can't have anyone on the farm. Usually we're running programs, classes, a robust volunteer program. So we will continue to find ways to do that virtually and ideally welcome folks back to the campus when appropriate. We do get a little bit of revenue from the farm by selling to the farm market and the local food hub. But again, a vast majority of what we're doing is not for profit. We're lucky to be able to support our community through food donations because we are a nonprofit status organization.
That's a great question because I feel like our farm is very unique in that sense.
It is unique, yeah. Cool. Well, maybe I can just say a little bit more about our soil practices. I don't know, does anyone actually interested in that? I'm interested in that.
Oh yeah.
So we practice, I think that there's a concept of, maybe we can go back to soil health, and we talked about that Venn diagram of physical, biological, and chemical properties with soil health. You know, if everything's in balance, soil health is there in the middle. So when we talk about physical properties, we're talking about the phenotype and the genotype of soil. So the composition of sand, silt, and clay, which we all learned about in, I don't know, 5th grade. And then there's thousands of different soil varieties, I guess you would say, soil types. So here we're actually on Tukwila muck. And it's, as it sounds, pretty mucky. Did we say at the beginning that this is historic wetlands? We haven't yet. So this whole valley, the whole Sammamish Valley where the agricultural production district is historical wetlands, which plays a big role in how we manage our soil and how we manage our restoration projects, which we'll come to in a minute. So you can't change what type of soil you have, right? But you can change how you manage it and how you support it. So that's the sort of physical aspect. The chemical aspect is the pH of the soil, and you always want the pH to be around 6.5, 6? Uh-oh, 6. Jess is telling me 6. And we do that by you can put lime, you can put compost, but we don't want more than like about a 5% organic matter with your compost. And that's sort of like a Western agricultural ideal. Obviously, if you're in a wetland, there's going to be a lot higher percentage of organic matter, which is why you have different native species and different ecosystems, because the soils are all different. And then the biological health of soil is all those delightful critters and why we say that soil is alive. So there's tons of invertebrates and fungi and plants, decomposing material, all sorts of tasty things. So when that is all in balance, you have healthy soil. And we keep it in balance by cultural practices such as cover crop, etc., and our low-till farming methods. Our type of soil, Tukwila muck, is not conducive to no-till. I think a lot of people throw out no-till as being the end-all be-all, and yes, it's wonderful if you have soil that's conducive to it. So we practice low-till farming, which is the best thing for our particular soil type. Questions on that?
Oh, looks like Margaret is asking if we can explain low-till more.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so no-till farming would be like very limited, minimal disruption of the topsoil, which is the top 16 inches of soil, 12 to 18 inches of soil, which is where you have most of your organic matter and what we're growing all of our crops in. And the idea is that the soil communities that exist in that topsoil are, if you're doing it right, are pretty self-sufficient and pretty healthy. And the more that we're disrupting those soil communities through things like, in conventional ag, you think about like giant tilling, like those giant tillers on the back of tractors that are just like disking and disrupting and kind of literally slicing apart the soil ecology. So there's a school of thought, no till, it's saying if we keep our soil healthy and those soil communities intact, we are requiring less inputs. Jess, do you want to add on to that? Okay, cool. So low till would be kind of finding ways to lightly work the soil in ways that aren't fully disrupting. So something like a keyline plow, like when we did our cover crop earlier in the fall, we had a keyline plow, which is like almost like a knife, and it's going through and just slicing deep. So we're aerating the soil, but we're not totally turning it over and disrupting. So that would be an example of a low till practice. Dealing with compaction, yeah. So we were dealing with some pretty serious compaction over, maybe in all of our fields, but because of the soil type that we have, it's really mucky. It wants to be a wetland. So we need to help it out a little bit in that way. Cool. Well, I'm wondering if we should walk just this way so that they can see a little bit more of the field.
And I want to let you know we're at 11:44.
Great. So we will walk this way and then we'll walk over to the wetland. This is actually maybe not a good plan for me. Jess, do you want to walk this way? And I'm going to take a slightly different route for my ankle. Oh, another interesting challenge of farming right here is we have the pollinator buffer zone to our west that Jess has worked really hard on, again, making sure pollinators are incorporated into our management plan. But the bees were so excited about the buckwheat, that cover crop we just talked about, that they were attacking us if we got between the apiary and the buckwheat, which is right where we're standing. So that was an interesting week of harvesting. And there's Anthony and Aaron out in the field. Hey guys, will you wave? We're doing a farm tour. My mom's on the farm tour. And they are diligently working. And so Jess is showing you, we've got a bunch of hardy greens back there that are starting to go to seed. It's getting to the end of the season. We've still got a ton of beautiful beans and lettuces, beets. Oh wow, the beets are looking amazing. They can't hear me. Did you thin them all? No, Jess did. Jess thinned them all. Dang, these beets were out of control earlier. So you can see Aaron is weeding the lettuce and he's in the purple shirt, and Anthony in the green shirt, who's our farm manager and just incredible wealth of knowledge about everything farming, particularly soil health, is just cleaning out some of that weed residue from the paths in between the beds. This is what farming looks like. It's not at all glamorous, but it's very rewarding. Is the video okay?
Yes, it is. And I wanted to share that I shared in the chat. I love you all so much.
We have a pretty great farm team. Oh, this was Anthony's experiment this year was growing dahlias from seed, which I had never seen done before. I've always seen them grown from tubers. So all of these dahlias were done from seed. And they did get pretty attacked by the wireworms. You can see that the rows aren't completely full, but we got a few and they're really dang beautiful. And it's not quite enough to sell, so we're kind of secretly excited because we just keep making beautiful bouquets for our farm office. These are some of my favorite flowers. We have these bachelor buttons. I just love the colors. And here's more of this buckwheat cover crop. And you can see next to the buckwheat is some rows that the guys have just finished up and are ready to plant up. We kind of have to wait for the soil moisture to be correct. And we've gotten, after no rain, the super hot spell, we've gotten a lot of rain the last 2 days. So we have to wait for it to dry out a little bit before we can transplant. Oh, this is our wash pack. And this is where we, after we harvest, we wash and pack everything in there to send it to the market or to sell, et cetera, et cetera. Ta-da, ta-da. Cool. Oh, you can see, check out these giant zucchinis. We are having almost an issue with so much zucchini right now.
Wow.
Some of these are like, I feel like I'm holding like babies.
Is there a benefit to, I forget which kind of squash, but I know some are good when they're small and some are like fantastic when they're large.
Yeah, so the Castada, which is when we're actually going to walk right by our squash, so I'll show you. We're growing 4 different types of summer squash right now, and you've got to be diligent. They grow so fast, so we usually harvest on Tuesdays, and we have to harvest like all different sizes, because if you wait another week, they're like the size of my torso. So we have Zephyrs, which are those yellow ones. Maybe you want to show them one, Jess? There's a couple pretty ones right here. Oh, and you can see with the squash blossoms, which are also really tasty to eat. So those are the Zephyr squashes.
Oh, wow.
And we have like your classic zucchini over here. The guys just picked them, so I don't know that we're gonna, but here's like it's like what you can see, like the classic zucchini. Here's an overly large one. The classic zucchini, when they get this big, are not as good.
Okay.
So you gotta pick them fast. And then we have the Castada, which are the sort of striped, oh here's a giant Castada zucchini, and they are actually still really good even if they're that big.
I can't really see it.
Could you do it again, Jess?
Do you
Hold them
mind
now.
holding slowly? There. Looks like a watermelon.
I know, that big daddy. And then we've got our patty pans, our tiny UFOs. Mom, they make me think of Burton every time I see them. You've got them right there.
Oh, funny. We've got a question from the chat from Alita.
Sure.
Wondering, did we install an irrigation system, or do we run hoses? Do we use water barrels, or just let nature do its thing?
Yes. So it depends on which crop we're talking about, which block. We do have an irrigation system, and you can see it kind of close up here. So
we
we've got
lost video again. So
we lost video. But it was working here a second ago, so let's give it a moment. 10. Okay. Okay, you've got it back?
Yep.
Cool. Jess just let me know that her phone is getting drained from all the excitement, so we might have to switch over to just my phone if necessary. So we have water coming from the cistern, which is kind of back behind us, and then it comes through these giant irrigations, and then we have just drip tape kind of coming through these small ones, and we run lines down each row. And then we'll turn them on depending on which crops need how much water. For example, out in the far field, we're dry farming tomatoes, which is a way of farming that was started really unfortunately with the farms that are currently burning in the Santa Cruz area. So just a moment to think about them and wish them the best as they try to reclaim their land. So there's different ways of farming that require different amounts of water. Is kind of the short answer, but yes, we do have irrigation set up. And we also have wobblers, these sprinklers, which are, Jess, do you want to explain wobblers?
It's overhead sprinkler watering, but they're more efficient and they cast a really large umbrella of water. So you could basically use 4 to do a whole field.
Yeah, can you folks hear Jess?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Then Anthony gets very excited about the wobblers. High efficiency. Okay, really quick, before we run out of time, I meant to leave more time for this, but I wanted to showcase some of the work that Jess is doing, the restoration work. So again, we're in this historical wetland area. And we, besides our 5 acres of production space, we have a chunk of land that we're trying to restore back to wetlands for ecosystem services. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Jess. Do you want me to film you, or do you want to just talk from there?
I'll just talk if you guys can hear me.
Can you hear Jess?
Sounds good.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, great. One thing we didn't cover that's super important to all of the habitat and restoration work we're doing on the farm is the concept of ecosystem services.
Yes.
So I don't know if everyone in the group has heard of this. Basically, it's any benefit that we receive from nature. And our natural systems on the farm do a lot of work for us. They pollinate our vegetables. They give us clean, fresh water. Our naturally occurring systems are completely important to everything we're doing in our managed agricultural system. So the wetland on our farm holds water and cleans water and provides a lot of habitat for critters that eat pests. So this area that we're looking at right here is plastic is covering reed canary grass. So it's just another way we're trying to manage invasives.
You can sort of see it's being quite successful. So we're solarizing it, and as Jess said in her video the other day, there's no green, so it's a good sign.
Yeah. So even though this looks like plastic on a field, it actually is restoration work in progress. So I think it's kind of fun to flip the narrative and see that restoration can look a lot of different ways, and we're doing it in a lot of different ways on our property. We already looked at the pigs. Now we're looking at these plastic sheets, but in some of our more established areas where there's trees, we're just going in and manually removing blackberry. So a lot of different tools and methods to this work, but in general, it's a part of our farming practice. And it's part of what makes our farm so successful in creating vegetables is all the work we do on the periphery of our fields.
Yeah. I just want to give a shout out to Jess because she normally has an army of volunteers that are helping with this restoration work. It's so much manual labor, like physically removing blackberry crowns. And we don't have volunteers on the farm really this season because of COVID. So it's been a lot of hard work.
For everyone.
For everyone.
Farmers too.
Yeah. Any questions about restoration or ecosystem services?
Just pausing. I just want to say, Jess, you're so valuable. Your wisdom is just amazing.
Jess is getting uncomfortable. She hates being told she's doing a good job.
You're doing so great, though, and
amazing.
Just happy that you're on our team and sharing, your passion here and really restoring so much of the land.
Yeah, maybe we should. Oh, sorry, Ryan, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries.
I agree full-heartedly. I think these folks are from the East Coast. They've never seen the amount of blackberries. Do you want to just kind of show them both the other way to mitigate invasives is just to eat all the blackberries.
Woohoo!
Would recommend.
Can I share something horrible and amazing about blackberries?
Please, I'm gonna taste one while you're saying that.
So blackberries not only spread through seeds, but they have the ability to root from their leaves as they kind of grow giant tall vines. As the leaves and the tip of the vine starts to touch the ground, they send out roots again. So they have multiple ways of seeding themselves, and that's why they're just so horrible and they take over everything.
Tasty jerks.
We want to eat them all. Oh, also, we have Matt who's joined us. I'm not sure at what point, but I just want to say verbally, thank you for joining us, Matt.
Hi, Matt. We're actually, unfortunately, almost done here, but Matt, if you have any questions, we can totally stay on the line afterwards, and that's true for everyone. I did want to just do a last debrief, and we'll kind of walk back this way. Should we do a debrief in the squash? But kind of, in short, everything we're doing here on the farm with our land stewardship and our agroecological framework is just building resilient local food systems, local food economies, and really trying our best to contribute to climate action. So we're just doing our best to strive towards those things. And I hope that this tour has been a little bit showing you how everything we do is, again, building those resilient food communities and enacting climate action. So I just wanted to think for a moment and see if there are any last questions or anything you would like to share, something that particularly struck you on the tour.
Margaret and Matt both echo that this has been really interesting, and they thank you for your time.
Oh, awesome. It's been our pleasure.
It's so great to have y'all here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. We will continue to keep experimenting with virtual programming. We'll be doing these farm tours once a month. And I will be sometimes running them. Maybe some other folks will be eventually. And we'll kind of tailor them to what folks are interested in. So feel free to join us again and continue to ask questions. Later, I'd love to continue connecting and see how we can support you in your starting a farm. And continue to check out our webpage. We have a lot of other virtual learning options. And eventually we'll be accepting volunteers back here. So, those in Boston and New York, just fly on out and volunteer on the farm. Just kidding, please don't. So yeah, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your participation. And it's been wonderful.